It's the All Things Strange podcast. I am your host, Agent Anderson. Come along as we examine UFO sightings, conspiracies, and all things strange. You can find all of our wonderful links in the description on the Linktree, where you can find our Patreon, our Discord, our merchandise, and more. This week's episode, The GATE Program. I remember this program from when I was a child. It's called the Gifted and Talented Education Program, or GATE for short, G-A-T-E. It goes by a lot of other names as well, and there are still versions of this around today. But there's something strange going on with this program, or there was in the 90s. A lot of people have reported having similar experiences, and we'll get to that in just a moment. Before we get started, we've got two wonderful tiers of patronage for you. You can find the link in the description on the Linktree. The first tier will get you early access and bonus episodes. And the second tier will get you the ability to vote on upcoming topics such as this one. The bonus episodes are on a semi-weekly basis. Every once in a while, I'll miss a week if I'm sick or otherwise unavailable, but most of the time it's weekly, and the tiers come in at $3 and $5, so it's a relative bargain compared to other podcasts that I've encountered, some of which charge an insane amount of money. But hey, if they can demand such a price, good for them. Anyways, let's get to the GATE program. So as I said, many people had strange experiences during this program in the 1990s. And it's not like it was one or two people. It was a lot of people all reporting these strange things. So, of course, it's perfect for this show, right? How does this program work? Well, kids are generally identified by their teachers as gifted and ushered into the program. And other times they'll use standardized testing. And the kids who are in the top 1 or 2% get put into the GATE program or some sort of advanced program. The reason for that is that because obviously the kids are not really going to fare well in an average class. So this is a United States phenomenon, by the way. I didn't see any mention of this outside of the United States, but we have a lot of people here, and our classes are designed to teach to the middle. So if you're a student who's advanced, then you'll be bored to tears all the time in class. They'll be going at a much slower pace than what you're capable of. And that's the idea behind advanced education, right? It's not a novel idea. I'm sure you guys have heard of this before. So the program we're talking about came or does come in various forms, such as extra enrichment classes where they would go to a separate classroom and get a 1 or 2 hour lecture or program or experience on a topic that was either a topic that they don't normally do in class or maybe elaborating on a topic that they've already studied. There are also just accelerated learning classes where instead of being with the other students and periodically once or twice a week going to a separate classroom and doing this GATE program, you're just in a whole different class with only smart kids. They would also get special field trips. Sometimes they skip grades, etc. You know, all the 9 yards that you would expect for smart kids. So most of the stories involved for this case are not kids that were in a dedicated classroom for advanced children, rather for kids that are in a regular class and once or twice a week they go and do something else that not the normal kids don't get to do. And I remember this as a kid. I was not a gate child. I know you are all very surprised that I'm not in the top 1 or 2%. Shocked, I tell you. But I do remember having friends who were, and they got out of class and they thought it was awesome because they didn't have to sit through the boring stuff that everybody else did. They got to go do something that was often way more fun or cool than what we got to do. You know, they got to go play games, sometimes even certain video games. They got to go on field trips. They got all kinds of really cool stuff that, you know, us dummies did not get to do. So we were all super jealous of them. So why is it on this show? A lot of these students have memories of very strange things. And like I said, it's not 1 or 2 people reporting 1 or 2 strange things. It's a lot of people who have very specific experiences in common. And a lot of these things don't really make any sense for a program geared towards advanced students. What are some of these common experiences? Well, one of the more common ones is memory loss. A lot of people report memory loss of what they did during the program. So maybe specifically when they left their classroom to go do the gate activity, they don't really remember the gate activity. They just remember leaving and coming back. Some people have only fragments of memories that feel familiar, but almost dreamlike, while others have no recollection at all. And some people even report a total loss of memory of the years of their childhood when they were in the GATE program. So they remember before they were enrolled in the GATE program and after, but they don't remember anything. There's just a memory hole. And like I said, this is not 1 or 2 people. There are lots of people with this common experience. Really weird. I mean, think about your childhood. You don't remember everything, right? But I can think of all of my teachers. I can remember every grade, and I can remember where I was living at the time, and I can remember certain activities that I was doing at the time, that kind of stuff, right? So this is extremely strange that people would have these memory losses or memory holes. Oftentimes, well, not oftentimes, but a lot of people report that they won't remember something until a memory is triggered that they had forgotten. One of those common things is the shapes on the Zener cards. We'll get to the Zener cards in a moment, but they have some very common shapes, square, circle, wavy lines, and so on. And people will see something similar and it'll trigger a memory that they had forgotten. A lot of people report having an uneasy feeling about the program in general, but nothing really specific that they can put their finger on. They just think about, if they think about the GATE program, they just sort of feel uncomfortable and uneasy about it, and they don't know why. Another interesting detail is that a lot of people can't remember the name of their GATE instructor, but they can remember the names of all of their other teachers and staff that were at the school. Like Principal Skinner. I remember good old Principal Skinner, People remember those names, but they don't remember the GATE instructor. Weird. A common experience that a lot of people report is that they have ringing in their ears that isn't due to tinnitus. It's not constant all the time, whereas tinnitus tends to be always happening. You experience it all the time, but instead they will have like intermittent tinnitus. I'm not sure if that's a thing. I'm not a doctor, but this is what people are reporting, and it's extremely strange. They'll hear sometimes high-pitched tones, sometimes short tones in a pattern. Other people report a really loud, low hum that in some cases causes vertigo, and other people around cannot hear the sound. Only they can hear it. So it's not an external source. It's something like tinnitus, but they don't know what it is. And it doesn't really meet the clinical requirements to be diagnosed as tinnitus. Sometimes they'll hear these sounds in one ear, sometimes both ears, and sometimes it fluctuates between ears. This sounds extremely uncomfortable to experience. I do have some mild tinnitus. I think a lot of people do. I don't think there's anything uncommon about that, but it's just a constant drone that I can tune out. It's not anything like what these people are describing. Weird. Sometimes people don't have this tinnitus problem. For lack of a better term, we'll call it tinnitus. They don't have the problem until they think about the GATE program or memories from the GATE program, and then it'll trigger the tinnitus, and then they'll start hearing these strange tones or patterns of tones. Sometimes these tones can be triggered by thoughts of the GATE program. Other times, thoughts of UFOs, non-human intelligence, spirituality, contemplating the nature of reality or consciousness or the universe. Topics such as these bring on this experience, and sometimes when they're thinking about these topics, the experience is more intense than normal. I mean, what would that be? Could this be some kind of conditioning to prevent these people from thinking about this? Is this some way of suppressing a memory by, I don't know, by making them have this uncomfortable experience, so it makes them not want to think about these things because, it's like a deterrent, right? Because it makes an uncomfortable experience, so your brain subconsciously makes you not think about these things. I don't know, man. This is weird. This is really weird stuff. All right, the Zener cards. The Zener cards, those are those cards at the beginning of Ghostbusters. I don't know if you remember, but what is Venkman? Who plays Venkman? It's God, I can't believe I forgot his name. He's like one of the biggest actors ever, although he hasn't been in a whole lot lately. He was huge in the 80s. Bill Murray, that's his name. Anyways, at the beginning of the movie, Bill Murray is running a test with these cards that have shapes on them. And he has two test subjects. He has he's a college professor, and one of the test subjects is a beautiful undergrad woman, and the other is a guy. And it's funny because in the test, he's trying to seduce the woman or young lady, as creepy college professors sometimes do. This stereotype is based on something after all. But anyways, he's trying to seduce her, so she keeps guessing incorrectly, and he tells her that she's getting it correct. Whereas the guy that's there is, the male student, the young man, keeps guessing it correctly, and he gets zapped with little electric shocks. So the idea is that the cards are being used to develop psychic abilities, and the test subjects are supposed to psychically know what's on the card. And the incentive of an electric shock is supposed to help them develop that ability, I suppose, in this version of the test in the movie. But the character is just using this as a way to seduce the undergrad female. Kind of creepy, but also kind of hilarious. So anyways, that's where I remember seeing the Zener cards. I've never done a test like this myself, but the idea is that this is a deck of 25 cards, and there are 5 cards each of 5 different symbols. Those symbols are a circle, a plus sign, 3 vertical wavy lines, a square, and a star shape. And they're pretty, I don't know, I guess they're pretty stark and identifiable symbols. And the idea with that would be, I'm guessing, to use simple, easy to imagine shapes or easy to see shapes rather than a more complex form that might be hard to recognize or identify, right? Because you're not testing shape recognition, you're trying to test psychic ability. So the idea is that you go through the entire 25 deck cards and you can see if the person is able to guess correctly more often than they would be able to do just by chance alone. The tester picks a card and looks at it, and the other person who cannot see the card simply guesses what picture is on it. And when all the cards are gone, the test is over. Skeptics rightfully claim that this method is flawed, but that's a whole separate discussion and isn't really the point here. But so there have been people who have demonstrated what appears to be psychic ability using these cards, But some people have also pointed out that this is a very flawed way of doing it, and that there are either people who are straight up scamming or pretending to be psychic when they're not, or there are also subliminal cues, things like that. We won't go into all of that because it's not really the point here. The point is that these cards are used to test psychic ability, and many people in the GATE program remember being tested with these cards. And when former GATE students see the cards or shapes that are similar to the cards, which circles and squares and whatnot are pretty commonly seen. I'm looking at a poster that I printed out on my wall of my studio of the Odyssey 2, and it has little television screens on there that are almost square. So maybe something like that could even trigger the memory, right? Who knows? But when they see the shapes or something that reminds them of the shapes from the cards, they have a very strong reaction, such as the feeling of their stomach dropping, or what some refer to as a, quote, hair-raising trauma response. So as if they have PTSD, and seeing these shapes triggers PTSD. Now, this is weird on several levels. First off, why on earth are students part of an advanced learning program? They should be learning, calculus or physics or something, or higher learning of some kind, something to stimulate their little minds so they don't die of boredom in the regular class. Why are they being tested for psychic ability? And people also reported that sometimes it was presented as a contest, and they were encouraged to compete with the other people in the class to try and guess correctly more than the other people, and sometimes there were prizes for getting the most number correct. So why on earth would this be done in an advanced class? It doesn't make any sense. It's extremely weird. And like I said at the beginning, this is not a memory that one or two people have. This is something that many people remember, which, who knows, maybe you have a group of people who are all hallucinating or making up something. But on the other hand, I think there's a good chance that a lot of people had this experience. But more importantly, why would it cause a trauma response? I find that extremely disconcerting, extremely worrying. Why would people have a trauma response when they see these shapes? What were they doing to those kids in these classes? I don't know. So the types of tests they would do with these cards varied a little bit. Sometimes they had the person looking at the card and then the student had to guess what they were looking at. Other times the cards were in a row and, face down in a row, and they had to pick a specific shape from that row. Other times they had to pick a shape or pick a card out of a brown envelope. So there were many different types of tests associated with these cards. And a lot of people remember getting correct answers more often than you should by pure chance. This memory, I say, might need to be taken with a grain of salt. I'm not saying that they're lying, but ask me how many math questions I got correct on a particular Wednesday when I was in 4th grade. I couldn't tell you, So I think it's possible that might be an inaccurate memory. It might be that they, due to the way the tests were run or how they were encouraged to get correct answers, it could be something like gambler's fallacy, where if you gamble, I think they call it gambler's fallacy, where if you gamble, you remember the times you won, but you don't remember the times that you lost. So you can go to Las Vegas, lose a ton of money, and yet come away feeling like you are ahead of the game, assuming that you don't keep strict track of how much money you're gambling. And by the way, that's why they give you free alcohol when you're playing the games, because heck of a lot harder to count cards when you're drunk, But anyways, I think that it's an important detail to consider, but this could be a memory that people are inaccurate. I don't know. Who knows? It could be either way, but it's still an interesting detail to consider. One of the weird things about these Zenner tests, these card tests, is that the kids remember, or the adults who were kids, they remember the tests taking place in a dark room of some kind, either a room with no windows, such as a basement, or with the windows covered, oftentimes in some sort of portable building. So a lot of schools will have portables, a temporary building that's put up in place when they need more classroom space, but they don't have time to build, because summer breaks are only so long, and building a new building is very expensive and takes a lot of time. So oftentimes instead, they'll just put up a little portable building. Well, people reported that these tests, or the GATE programs in general, a lot of the times took place in these rooms or portable rooms with windows covered up, and that the rooms were often dark. Not necessarily pitch black, but the lights were lowered. This is extremely, extremely strange stuff. I need to call up some of my old friends and see if they remember any of this crap from when, because there were a few people I knew in GATE. Not sure I have all their phone numbers, but man, I would have been, for me, this would have been like in the 80s. And there are some people who seem to be reporting this stuff from the 80s, but it seems like most of it was from the 90s. So who knows? My generation might have been a little too young to have experienced this kind of stuff, or maybe not. Who knows? Maybe I should ask people that I know. And if I do end up talking to them, I'll get back to y'alls and see what they said. But for now, the show must go on. All right. The next thing a lot of people report that is extremely strange and alarming is that they were given a pink drink in a small cup, and they were not told what that drink was. And they said that it looked similar to, I don't know if you remember when you were a kid, they give you this pink stuff that's like amoxicillin or some other antibiotic. They'd put it in like a pink liquid and you drink it for like ear infections or whatever, And probably they do that because for kids, it's harder to swallow pills than it is to just drink it. But they said it looked similar to that or Pepto-Bismol, but it tasted like bubblegum. It did not taste like Pepto. The kids were told that it was fluoride, which is completely absurd because there's no reason why you would drink fluoride like this. It's silly. And if it was fluoride, you would get sick by drinking that much. So it's a strange explanation. So whatever it was, the children were not being told what was in there, and the parents were not notified that their kids were going to be given this pink drink, whatever it is, and the parents were not notified, or they were not asked for permission, and they were not notified that they were going to drink this stuff. So what was this stuff? Nobody knows, but a lot of people report having drinking it. It's extremely bizarre. Once again, it begs the question, why are kids in an advanced class being given some mysterious pink drink during what should be an advanced lesson on something? All right, now the hearing tests. There are a lot of reports of hearing tests, but they aren't actual hearing tests. I remember taking hearing tests a couple of times, like maybe once a year or something. They'd put you in a room, like a portable with the windows covered up, right? But the lights were not dim, and you'd put on headphones and they would play tones in different ears at different pitches, and they would tell you to press a button when you heard the tones. And this was used to identify children with hearing problems so that they could go get treatment, or they could get whatever they needed in the classroom, special help, sign language, whatever it is, so that, instead of the kid just being an idiot, basically, no, that kid's perfectly smart. They're They just can't hear anything. So, they did tests like that. They did vision tests as well. So I remember doing that a few times when in elementary school when I was young. So it's similar to that, where they sit with a booth, like a three-sided booth, basically, right? Like one of those privacy things, like a voting booth or something. And they would be given heavy headphones with large cushions, and the headphones were corded because they didn't have Bluetooth back then. Each student got their own booth, and so they heard tones like you would expect for a hearing test, but the tones would be played in weird patterns, and they would be asked to predict what tone would come next in the pattern. Some kids were given these tests in front of a computer screen that had a red dot on it. What the possible purpose of that is, I don't know. Some kids were asked to match the sounds they were hearing to certain shapes. Again, what would be the purpose of that? I don't know. And the kids remember the equipment being brought into the class in a suitcase, brought in by somebody who was identified as a friend of the GATE instructor. So that's not weird, right? And just like the Zinner cards, these tests were done in a room with no windows or with covered windows and with the lights down. So it was done in the dark. Some people have speculated that the reason the lights were turned down in the room has to do with sensory deprivation. And sensory deprivation has been used before in studies for ESP or psychic ability, things like that. Because supposedly if you have complete sensory deprivation, it causes your senses to do strange things. So that might, I guess, help you with psychic abilities. Who knows? So they reported having these hearing tests way more often than you would expect, several times a year or more, whereas typically you would only receive these tests once a year or less. So that's kind of weird. And also some people who went on later on in life and had EMDR therapy, which is, what does that stand for again? Let me Google that real quick. I forgot what that stands for. EMDR. Oh, eye movement desensitization and R. What's R stand for? And reprocessing. So eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. So this is done sometimes this is a type of therapy that they've tried on people with traumatic experiences to try and overcome PTSD and things like that. Some people who have done this type of therapy later on in life, EMDR therapy, have reported that they recalled suppressed memories of these hearing tests. So they completely forgot about the hearing tests or these, whatever these tests were. And then when they have this therapy, the memories come flooding back in. Also similar to these hearing tests, people remember having listened to the Gateway tapes. These are a series of recordings by Robert Monroe, who was alive from 1915 to 1995. He developed this particular method and also founded the Monroe Institute, which is still around today, by the way. And you can find these tapes for yourself. You can find recordings of them online. I guess there are free and paid versions. I don't know, maybe the newer updated versions are paid and they're updated with more modern techniques, I guess. Who knows? But anyways, this is a weird topic that's probably worthy of its entire dedicated episode. I put it on the list to look at some point in the future. A lot of people have done these tapes and reported various things. And if I do an episode on this, I will go through the tapes myself, because why not, right? But anyways, the idea of these tapes are, well, here, I'll read a description here. It's a series of audio recordings designed to guide listeners into altered states of consciousness using a technique called HemiSync, which involves binaural beats and guided meditation. These tapes are part of the Gateway Experience. It's kind of weird, the coincidence. So the GATE program for children is not the same thing as the Gateway Experience program. Weird coincidence? Or maybe it's intentional, who knows? These tapes are part of the Gateway Experience, a program created by the Monroe Institute, which Monroe founded to explore expanded states of awareness and out-of-body experiences. Users have reported a range of experiences from deep relaxation to what they describe as out-of-body experiences, with some noting that the tapes help them achieve states of consciousness that they find difficult to reach through traditional meditation practices. However, others have expressed doubts about the effectiveness of the tapes, suggesting that they may be more about guided hypnosis than actual out-of-body experiences. The Gateway tapes are part of a larger body of work by Bob Monroe, who is best known for his 1971 book, Journeys Out of the Body, which popularized the concept of out-of-body experiences. The tapes are also connected to the Monroe Institute's residential programs, which offer more in-depth exploration of consciousness and are considered the pinnacle of the Gateway experience. So I guess you can pay some money and go stay on location and go through these experiments or whatever you want to call them to try to get astral projection and out-of-body experiences and whatnot. All right, so that's all fine, all good and well, but what is actually happening here? What place does out-of-body experiences, the astral plane, and altered states of consciousness have in children's education? This doesn't make any sense that they would be having kids, that they had kids listen to these tapes. This is extremely strange and alarming. I don't like this one bit. And just as an aside, the Monroe Institute is not officially associated with the military, at least not that I could find. However, the military did send people on multiple occasions, different branches sent people to these programs to see what it was all about, to go through the out-of-body experience training. So there is a military connection there. How deep is the connection? I don't know. So the memory a lot of people have is that they would go into a classroom, it would be dark in there, and they would be asked to lay down on the ground, sometimes under their desks or on, like a camping pad or yoga mat type thing, like a padded thing. They'd be asked to lay down, close their eyes, and visualize with their mind's eye while the tapes were played for them, sometimes through headphones, sometimes just through a speaker into the room. Some people were asked to wear eye masks to completely block out light, so you're doing the sensory deprivation kind of a thing. And then after the tapes, listening to them, they were asked about their experiences and dreams while meditating. Once again, like many of these things, a lot of people forgot about these tapes entirely until they encountered them later on in life and listened to them again as adults, and then they remembered hearing them as children. Extremely strange stuff. Okay, so the next thing a lot of these people have in common is when they grew up, they ended up having mental health problems later on in life, such as ADHD, depression, anxiety, constant intrusive thoughts. A lot of them had behavioral issues during and after the program that weren't there before. An uncommon amount of people with polyfragmented dissociative identity order, which is, multiple personality disorder, autism. A lot of them had mental hospitalizations and were abused by their psychiatric caregivers. A lot of this stuff is starting to sound like it parallels Project MK Ultra. This is starting to sound awfully creepy. Now we get a really interesting connection to the CIA, which, of course, at this point doesn't surprise me one bit. A lot of the kids underwent the personality assessment system test multiple times, which was a test invented by John W. Gittinger. Here's a quote from Wikipedia. The PAS is based on premises, among others, that behavior is determined by both heredity and environment, and behavior is determined by an interacting system of traits. Furthermore, these traits can be modified through learning, such as an extent that some might be nearly opposite to the original genetic direction. Gittinger's original formulation defines 3 primitive dimensions to which must be added general ability level, which is referred to in the PAS as normal level. There is an additional dimension related to psychological energy. In the theory, gender and age also affect the final personality description. So it's a psychological personality test. And there's a lot having to do with this test, with being able to not just say, oh, this is an A-type or B-type person kind of a deal, and okay, whatever, so I don't like confrontation or I do like confrontation. Big deal, who cares, right? Well, this test goes a lot deeper than that, and the idea is that you could use it to predict behavior. So you could predict, theoretically, which people will become leaders and CEOs, which people are destined to become criminals or mass murderers, so on and so forth. So that's one of the ideas behind this system, at least as far as I can tell. I read through some of the Wikipedia article. There's a lot of jargon and a lot of stuff I don't really understand from the field of psychology there. So I don't know, take it all with a grain of salt, I guess. Anyway, somebody linked a document from the CIA reading room. So this is from the actual CIA. This is a legitimate document. And I'm going to read some excerpts from this document because it has to do with this PAS test that was being given to these children. And once again, this test was not, the parents were not asked for permission and they were not notified of this test. Why on earth, how could you possibly justify giving psychological tests and possibly experiments on kids? This is absolute insanity. So anyways, I found this document that somebody linked it from the CIA reading room. This is a genuine CIA document or report titled Review of the Personality Assessment System. And I must warn you, if you go looking for this document yourself, when I clicked on this document to open the PDF so I could read through it, my Chromebook immediately started glitching out. The screen resolution started getting all funky and changing. The computer froze several times. This went on for a while and then it stopped happening. Maybe that's just a coincidence. This Chromebook that I've had for a couple of years now, I use on a regular basis for all sorts of things, has never once had any sort of glitch, let alone a glitch like this. And the moment I click on a CIA document, all sorts of strange things happen. So yeah, now I'm on the CIA's list. If I wasn't before, I definitely am on some kind of government list now. Great, right? But what can you do? Hey, man, I'll take one for the team, I guess. I don't know. But anyways, just be forewarned, if you want to read through this document, you might want to be careful about how you do it. So here we go. This is the abstract of the document. During fiscal year 1987, we conducted a thorough review of the Personality Assessment System, PAS, to gauge its continued usefulness as a screening and selection instrument and a personality descriptor for subjects in the psychoenergetics project. Now, I've never heard the psychoenergetics term before, PSYCHOENERGETICS. I've never heard of that before. So I looked it up, and they're basically talking about psychic stuff, Project Stargate type stuff. Maybe they referred to it during Project Stargate stuff that I've read about before, and I just don't remember the term. But that's what they're talking about. So they're talking about using the PAS to predict who will have psychic abilities. That's essentially what they're saying. So they're trying to find personality groups who are more likely to be psychic. Data for this review came from published articles where the PAS was reviewed or used as a research tool, attendance at the annual PAS conference, and extensive interviews with several of the principal developers. The PAS is a multi-factored personality assessment instrument that has been evolving over the past 30 years using behavioral measures as raw data for making inferences and predictions about personality and behavior. The early development work was conducted by John Gittinger and his associates in a private firm that served clients in business and government. What? Why do businesses and government want to develop this system? I don't know, it's starting to sound like some Gattaca level stuff going on here. During the last 20 years, the test has begun to make small inroads into the academic environment, but it remains obscure and controversial. So this is not something, at least when this report was written, this is not something that is even a thing in academia, but it's a thing that's being used by government and corporations. Really frightening stuff. So if this is a very uncommon test and it's very rarely used, I mean, that's not necessarily proof that these tests were being given to children through some government agency like the CIA, but I don't know, man. It's one hell of a coincidence, right? Your elementary school teacher is not going to randomly give you a psychological examination, and they sure as hell are not going to have any idea what this particular system is, what this assessment is. Nobody knows about this assessment. It's a very poorly understood or known test, at least at the time it was. So it's extremely strange that this was being given to kids. Continuing on here. This report traces the development of the PAS, gives an overview of the theory and methods of the test, and examines some of the problems connected with its use in the psychoenergetics project. It concludes that the use of the PAS as a descriptive tool has continuing merit. In other words, they're saying that this is somewhat successful at identifying people who could be psychic, has continuing merit, but that using the test for mass screening and mass selection of candidates for the psychoenergetic training is not feasible at this time. The only way they would know that it was not feasible for mass screening and mass selection would be that they had used the test for mass screening and mass selection. In other words, are they admitting in this paragraph that they have used this test widely? And since this is a test that's not widely used, I mean, I don't know, man, that's not exactly a smoking gun, but that's the closest thing you can get and still miss, right? That is, I don't know, that's extremely concerning, like a lot of this stuff, very, very bizarre. Some more excerpts from the report. So this is a 70-page report, give or take. I can't read the entire report, obviously, for everybody. So I did actually read through the whole thing, and here are some excerpts that I thought were interesting or possibly relevant to this case. Psychoenergetic research is hampered by the difficulty of finding able and cooperative talent for experimental use. So yeah, it's hard to find people who are psychic. So using this PAS test to identify groups of people who have psychic abilities is what they're talking about here. That would make their job a lot easier to find psychic agents to use in the field. And what the implication here is that if you're psychic, you might not even realize it, but they're looking for a group of people who all have similar things in common, certain traits that might indicate that they're psychic. All right, here's another quote. There have been numerous attempts in the experimental investigation of psychic phenomena to relate personality factors to psychoenergetic functioning. So that's, basically what I was just saying. Another quote, in 1983, the psychoenergetic research team at SRI International became confident enough in the stability of the remote viewing phenomenon to begin the task of assessing the personalities of remote viewers, the PAS was selected as the potential test instrument. So maybe I was wrong. Maybe this goes back further than the 90s and it goes back to the 80s. Like I said, I was not in the GATE program, so obviously I would not have any memories of this stuff. But according to Agent Grandma, according to my mom, I almost was in the GATE program, but maybe I'll talk about that in the after hours. Anyways, continuing on here, in fiscal year 1984, a pilot study was conducted using the PAS to test a group of people who, in previous work, had shown significant evidence of remote viewing ability. Clustering was found in several distinct PAS reference groups. So in other words, they're saying that yes, there are certain things these people have in common, and you can use the PAS to identify these people. Another quote, the PAS has the potential to answer much more than the simple question of whether or not an individual has psychic talent. It could potentially predict 1, the type of psychic task on which a given individual might perform best, 2, individuals with natural talent versus those who are trainable, 3, the type of learning environment best suited to potential trainees, 4, the most efficient training method for a given person. Okay, so they can identify more than just whether or not you're psychic, but are you good at telekinesis, astral projection, remote viewing, all kinds of stuff. The implications here are, of course, very wild. That being that, yes, this stuff that is generally regarded as science fiction or fantasy or whatever you want to call it is actually real. They do actually have psychic abilities. They have psychic spies who can remote view and control things with their minds, that kind of stuff. Pretty wild implications here. Another quote, the second level, the basic or attained structure, is a function of compensations to the primitive tendencies through interaction with the environment and is achieved as a child matures to adolescence. So I don't know what all that means necessarily. A lot of jargony type stuff in there, but they're mentioning here that it seems to be developing when a child matures to adolescence. In other words, elementary school and middle school, which is the ages a lot of these people remember this stuff happening. Again, not a smoking gun. It's not proof of a link, but we have enough bullet points here to say that it's awfully suspicious, right? That there's a good chance that the CIA was involved with these kids. Now, to be fair, I didn't find anywhere in this document that said specifically, yes, we did this testing in the GATE program. But of course, you're never going to find that document anyways, even if it exists. It's never going to be released to the public. Continuing on here with another quote. This is the last one I have from the document. The use of PAS as a potential mass screening instrument in conjunction with a self-report test, MBTI Myers-Briggs type indicator, personality types, has to be re-evaluated. It appears that although PAS can be used to predict MBTI scores, the converse is not true. It appears that the PAS's value to the psychoenergetic project will continue to be descriptive rather than predictive until a larger database of reliable psi performers is accumulated. So that right there to me suggests that at the time of this report, they fully intended to continue testing people using this PAS test. Oh man. So, again, that's another little psychic connection there with the CIA. Not proof, but very, very interesting. And of course, there were other psychological tests people reported being subjected to as kids, and the MBTI is one of those tests that people reported undergoing while in the GATE program. I didn't look into that one specifically because we have a lot of stuff to talk about here. And I didn't want to spend, 80% of the episode talking about personality tests. I think that the PAS example here is plenty for us to speculate on. We don't necessarily need to talk about all of the other ones that people reported. There's a handful of others. I think there's probably 3 other tests that people reported being subjected to. So it's interesting though, this test kind of made me think of the idea of fate. And it's like, it's a little sort of an uncomfortable idea, the idea that you are who you are and you don't really have any choice about it. In other words, if you're born with certain ingredients and because of your life experience, you have certain other ingredients, and that makes you a very specific person, and you don't really have the freedom of choice that we think we do, right? I'm not doing this podcast because I love the topics and I find it fascinating and I want to do it and I enjoy doing it. I'm doing it because I'm sort of predestined to do it and I would always have done it. Like it's not my choice to do this. Like that's such a strange idea, or certain people are destined to be criminals. They just have the ingredients. There's no way around it. They will be criminals and they will be in jail. They don't have any choice about it. That's kind of like what some of the underlying ideas are with the PAS system. It does say that these things are changeable, but there's also this idea that you can identify groups of people ahead of time. It's just, I don't know. It's just really, really weird. Oh, wait, no, I do have more quotes from this document. Okay, I thought I was done. This distribution incorporates cases drawn from JFK University, Mobius Group, the Monroe Institute. Interesting. Why is the CIA doing stuff at the Monroe Institute? Or maybe they're just using their data. Anyways, we now have a direct connection between the Monroe Institute, which, remember, the Monroe Institute was doing the Gateway Experience tapes. So that's a different thing than the PAS system. So now we have a different connection to a different thing that was being done to these kids, and it all starts leading back to the CIA. Really weird stuff. Anyways, Princeton University Psychophysical Research Laboratory, and the University of Wyoming, as well as SRI. I don't know what SRI is, and if you Google it, you get a lot of results. Let's see, probably a medical test like an MRI, right? SRI. Let's see what comes up. Something in Spanish, a global leader in R&D with deep roots in Silicon Valley, SRI International, SRI Performance. So, I mean, yeah, I Googled this when reading through this, and I don't think it said what SRI was in the report. So in order to figure that out, it would take a lot more time than I have for this episode. But that's still interesting, though, that they mention in this quote the Monroe Institute directly. Okay, here's an interesting quote. Viewer 009 has done the complete PAS twice with different testers at an interval of about 2 years. They don't say who viewer number 9 or viewer 009 is. They don't say where this test was done or what their age was, but this does line up with what these people recall. They were tested under the PAS system multiple times during the GATE program. So this describes what the people remember. Really weird. Viewer 414 did the incomplete PAS twice with different testers at an interval of about 6 months. He is now deceased. That is really creepy. They don't say who this person was. They don't say how they died. They don't give you any other information beyond what is quoted. How many viewers were there? What happened here? Why did this person die? This is extremely, extremely alarming. All right, here's another quote. At least 10 out of 12 stars and superstars fall into reference groups suggestive of good right brain development. Only 1 star, viewer 59, is in a group suggestive of left brain dominance. We would expect this viewer to experience the greatest difficulty with AOL. I don't know what AOL is other than America Online. Astral Orbital Lenticular? No, I don't know. I have no idea. I have no idea what that can mean. If you know what AOL is, let me know in the comments, right? So I guess, so if you're right brain dominant, that means you're left-handed, right? So I'm right-handed, meaning that I'm not psychic, apparently. There's superstars were all left-handed or right brain dominant. Weird. This is weird stuff. If we interpret the PAS, RF, and AU in signal processing terms, these results do make sense. We have said elsewhere that R demands a high signal-to-noise ratio in order for perception to occur. On the one hand, he learns that he can trust the reality of what he does perceive. On the other hand, he is prone to errors of omission. Thus, if he believes he has ESP, he is willing to be a subject and can learn to perform with statistical significance. The F individual is able to recognize a signal embedded in relatively more noise and is forced to learn techniques for distinguishing signal from noise. Even if he has ESP, he is less likely to trust it, and therefore less likely to be a subject. But once he masters the required skills, he produces a more in-depth product. And once again, throughout this whole document, they're talking as if psychic abilities are real. And I know some people might be listening to this and thinking, why are you talking about the GATE program? The fact that they have psychic abilities is way more interesting. Talk about that instead, right? I know, but that's not what our good Patreon subscribers voted for this week. They voted for the GATE project, so that's what we're doing. So they talk about different viewers throughout this document, and the highest number I noticed was viewer 928. Who knows how many people they have? Is that an actual number or is it just a designation? I don't know. But there appears to be a lot of people in these studies, which once again would be consistent with the GATE program, because many, many children would be exposed to this stuff, not just a handful, as you would expect with a CIA program that was secret. Now, there's one interesting thing in the document. They say that they went to the 7th Annual Rocky Mountain Conference on UFO Encounters in the summer of 1986, which was organized by Dr. Leo Sprinkle. And they were able to administer the PAS test to 7 volunteers. And out of the 7, 4 of them were in quote in psi-relevant groups. Leo Sprinkle, I'm sure we've mentioned him on the show before. He's a guy who's done stuff with UFO experiencers, with hypnosis and stuff like that. I certainly was not expected to see a UFO abduction connection to this episode. I find it extremely strange that the CIA would group these things in together. But there you go. There's, like I said, I think earlier in the episode, there were people who, did I say that yet? I don't know. There's so much stuff to this topic. It's hard to remember what I've talked about yet. But there were people who had the GATE program, who were in the GATE program, who remembered having more UFO experiences than normal. So maybe there's some kind of connection there. I don't know. It's very strange, and there's no direct connection, but there is this vague sort of mention in this document of going to a conference organized by Leo Sprinkle. Extremely bizarre stuff. All right, now I'm done with the document. So the children were told not to talk about what they did during their GATE classes, so that they were told the reason for this is that other students would feel left out, excluded, or feel jealous that they got to go do these really awesome things. Doesn't sound so awesome to me. There didn't seem to be any point to the program. The things they did out of class, there didn't seem to be any goal or any purpose. They weren't learning more advanced things. They were just doing these weird tests and playing strange games, and it seemed like a total waste of time to a lot of the kids, but they enjoyed going because it got them out of their normal classes. A lot of people remember the feeling that they were being studied. The GATE instructor, by the way, the GATE instructor was not a normal faculty member. It wasn't like a 3rd grade teacher who also did GATE. I mean, sometimes it was, but a lot of the kids, or a lot of the adults, remember as kids that often was not the case. Again, I was not in the GATE program, so I can't say whether or not that was the case in my neck of the woods. But anyways, the GATE instructor would often have what they described as a friend visit the class, and the friend didn't have any apparent purpose or reason to be there. They would just kind of stand around and observe things. and they would often dress in suits and look an awful lot like, the typical G-Man or the Men in Black kind of a thing. It's all very strange. Many of them also remember being recorded during gate class. Once again, parents were not asked for permission and they were not notified of their children being recorded during class. This is all, all this stuff just kind of blowing my tiny little mind, right? A lot of them have memories of going on field trips, often in the instructor's personal vehicle or a larger van that didn't belong to the school district or the school. Whose van was it? I don't know. Probably the CIA's. Could be anything though. We don't know. So anyways, they didn't remember the field trip. They remember leaving. They remember returning to school, but they have no idea what happened during the field trip. They never had a permission slip to bring to their parents, which is extremely bizarre, and you'll never see a school do that, at least not in the United States, for liability reasons. It's like that today. I sign permission slips for my children, and it was like that when I was a child. You'd have to bring home a permission slip to be able to go on the field trip, and if you forgot to have it signed or your parent refused permission, you would have to go and sit in the school library and read a boring book all day. Sometimes they let you choose the book, I guess, probably. I don't know. I think I only skipped a field trip once or twice, and I don't even remember why. Probably they were going to some activity and I just didn't want to go. Who knows? All right. The Rorschach tests, those ink spots. You remember, do you remember? You might, dear listener, might not have ever taken this test. I have never taken this test, but I've seen it many times on television shows and movies, so I'm familiar with the basic idea, where you will be shown an ink spot on a page and asked to interpret it. What do you see? Is it a butterfly? Is it, Barney being murdered by Mary Poppins? I don't know. So this sort of thing gives, it's sort of like a psychological indicator of the person. I guess you can use it to diagnose certain things, possibly. I don't know much about this test, and, I don't want to do too much on psychology tests, so I didn't look into it too deeply. But a lot of the people remember undergoing the Rorschach tests while they were in the GATE program. And once again, it begs the question, why would they be doing this on children? And once again, the kids' parents were not asked permission and they were not notified of these tests. A lot of the kids, or a lot of the adults as kids, I keep saying that, have memories that don't make any sense, such as walking on hot coals, having out-of-body experiences where they were asked to find objects around the classroom or in different classrooms. They remember dissecting a cow eye, but it looked like a large seed. It wasn't actually a cow eye. They remember hot air balloon rides, specifically a red hot air balloon. Either the red hot air balloon landing at their school and taking off, or actually getting a ride on the hot air balloon after it landed at their school. And just as an aside, I do remember that once at my school, they did have a hot air balloon come and land on the upper field. And I don't remember exactly why. I think it was just like an event that they did for the kids, on one of these. Once in a while, they would have like a fair day where you would do fun stuff, play games, go to different booths, like have a little carnival at school. And it was during one of those deals. Anyways, so the hot air balloon, we'll talk a little bit more about that later. They remember hanging a tennis ball from the ceiling and closing their eyes and trying to make it move. There's a lot of people who remember doing the trust fall. That's the fall where somebody stands behind you, you close your eyes and you fall backwards and they catch you. And a lot of people remember doing the trust fall during these GATE classes. Why would you have kids do the trust fall? I know for a fact that some of my friends would have let me fall for just as a joke. Why would you do that to kids? I don't know. It's extremely strange. All right, some other common experiences that these former GATE students have. A lot of them report having sleep paralysis, often with the feeling of being shocked by electricity. That's not terrifying at all. A lot of them report having precognitive dreams where, you dream something and then something very similar happens. Not necessarily even big events like a plane crash or something wild like that. Maybe even just something random and specific, like the clothes that somebody's wearing in front of you in line at the grocery store, or, a particular car that you see drive by, some stuff like that might be inconsequential, but they'll have a dream about it before it happens. Really, really quite strange. They report having lucid dreams more often than what is normal, and a lot of dreams about UFOs and or aliens. Really, really bizarre. This is like really weird stuff, guys. And a lot of them report having dreams or memories floating around their house, floating into the sky, or just floating around their neighborhood in general. Is that a common memory that a lot of people have? I have no idea. I certainly have no memories of that. Sounds like it could be fun, but then again, maybe not. I don't know. There's other things. I'll just go through a list real quick because we're getting a little long on the episode here, and I still have a little bit more I want to talk about. Things like deja vu, strong deja vu. And actually, I have a friend who gets really strong bouts of deja vu that will last for like 20, 30 minutes. And he told me that it's when you have a seizure in your temporal lobe that can cause that sensation. And I experience this when I get COVID sometimes. I have intense periods of deja vu, and it's not like the normal deja vu that you'll have. It feels like you're completely unhinged from the flow of time, I guess is the only way I can describe it. Like you feel disconnected from both yourself and from the regular flow of time, and older memories become intermixed with what you're currently doing, and there's no distinction between the two. It feels like you're experiencing both at the same time. And also, it's almost like an out of body experience because you're still going about your day as normal. If this happens in the middle of a conversation, then you continue talking. There's no break in the conversation. You continue going about whatever you're doing as normal, but you feel separated from it, like you're not in your own body. And I don't mean from the sense that you are outside of your body looking at yourself. I just mean like consciously, you don't feel like you're in your own body. It's extremely strange. It's extremely uncomfortable. I've broken bones before. I've had very painful experiences, like when I had my wisdom teeth removed as an adult in my 30s. 0 out of 10. Do not recommend. It was horrible. I've probably mentioned that on the show before, but so I've had some very, very physically painful experiences, and this deja vu experience is so much worse than anything else I've experienced. It is extremely uncomfortable to experience. I only started having these experiences after COVID. And I've talked to this friend who's had these experiences since childhood. Holy shit, I should ask this guy. I'm going to text him right now to see if he was in the GATE program. This is really weird. I just texted this particular friend who's had these deja vu experiences since he was a child. And this is similar to what a lot of former GATE students have reported. So I'm curious to see if he was actually in GATE, and there might be a connection there. I don't know. So I was not in GATE, as I said, and I only had these experiences after getting COVID several times, which kind of worries me a little bit that my brain is being eaten away every time I get sick. But then again, there's not a damn thing I can do about it, so I try not to worry too much. But anyways, long story short, a lot of people who are in the GATE program report these very strange deja vu experiences, not your typical deja vu, but extremely powerful bouts of deja vu. And there is a lot of variation in what they report, but what they report is not normal at all. So anyways, the list, a little bit of a list of things that they report that I'll go through real quick here. Some of them that I've mentioned: deja vu, repeatedly seeing ball lightning or orbs, migraines after the gate classes or when thinking about gate classes as an adult, and constant persistent migraines as an adult, having extreme fatigue during the gate program after going to the gate program and continuing on into adulthood, drug use later on in life, particularly hallucinogens. More people than you would expect who went through the gate program end up abusing drugs. UFO sightings are very common among these groups. Paranormal experiences such as ghosts and things of that nature, stuff like that. And also interest in paranormal topics such as UFO sightings or ghost sightings and that sort of thing, that more people than what you would expect are interested in those topics from former GATE students. People report having visual hallucinations after going to the GATE classes, seeing colors that sound an awful lot like LSD experiences. I've never been on LSD, but it sounds an awful lot like that's what they're reporting. Really, really quite strange, isn't it? I have no idea what to make of all this. Okay, here you go. So this friend got back to me. This friend who will remain anonymous says, no, they put me in honors English group for a bit, but I requested to get out because way too much homework and I wanted to play video games. So that's pretty interesting. So yes, this person was apparently not in the GATE program. I'm going to call them after I record this though, just to ask them some questions, because this is really, really interesting. I wonder in this honors English program when this was, if it was an elementary school, and if he has any of these experiences, because they didn't always call this the GATE program. It's gone under many different names. All right. So what was I saying? So the LSD type experiences, a lot of people report having similar experiences, not just while they were GATE students, but also throughout their lives. And I wonder if that's related to that pink stuff that they had to drink. Maybe they were being given LSD, as we know that the CIA used to do to unsuspecting test subjects. Another weird one is that often people have specific physical characteristics that ended up in the GATE program. For instance, a lot of them have a mole on their left arm in a specific place. A lot of them have a forehead scar. A lot of them have what's called an occipital bump on the back of their head. I actually have that bump. There's various discussions as to what that means. I don't know that it means anything, but that's like, if you look at the back of your head, there's some people have a bump on their back of their head. Some people don't. I have that bump, but I was not in GATE. But apparently more people than you would expect actually have that bump on their back of their head. Anyways, my friend just texted me back. He's like, why? Why do you want to know if I was, because that's kind of a strange question, right? So I just told him I'll call him back later after I finish recording. All right. So a lot of these people have physical characteristics that are in common with each other. It could be something to it. It could also be that there's definitely, did I mention this? I'm not sure I mentioned this yet, but one of the controversial things about the GATE program or advanced programs like this is that there does seem to be a bias. In other words, minority students are not selected for these programs nearly as often as white students. The statistics bear this out, at least for the time period in question. You would hope that things have gotten better, but that was one of the controversial things about the program, is that students were the identification of the students was very controversial, of gifted students. So it could be that if only a certain ethnicity was being put into the program, that it's possible that you would have certain common characteristics. Like, people from Ireland are more likely to have pale skin and red hair, like that kind of a stuff. So maybe Europeans are more likely to have the occipital bump on the back of their head. I don't know. I didn't look that much into it. because there are so many things to look at here. There's just not enough time to do a deep dive on each and every one. All right, and then the last thing I want to mention, there's more stuff. I'm not doing everything that's there. I'm just kind of mentioning a few things here. But one of the last thing I want to mention is a lot of people have who are in the GATE program have had near-death experiences throughout their lives, specifically, but not limited to, drowning experiences. The stories are pretty random. Sometimes the incidents happened before they were in school, when they were very, very young. Sometimes they happened when they were older. Sometimes they happened during the program. There's a wide variety of stories, but a lot of people did have near-death experiences. Now, this could be a coincidence. I don't know how common it is for somebody to have a near-death experience. I'm not sure it's super common, but then again, we as people tend to do lots of really dumb things that are also happen to be a lot of fun. Like, I don't know, surfing. Surfing is insane. Why would anybody do it? That's how you drown, but people do it, going out on boats, skydiving, whatever. So it's not outside the realm of possibility for your average person to have an instance where they almost drown. I don't think that that's necessarily super rare, but I don't know. I have no idea. I mean, I used to live in Southern California, not super close to the beach, but close enough to where we would go in the summertime. And I remember on a few occasions being, playing in the water, like let's say middle school age or elementary school age, and a big wave coming that you didn't expect and completely wiping you out and just slamming you onto the bottom of onto the sand and just rolling you around and then breathing in a little bit of water. I'm not sure. I don't think it was a near death experience, but it sucked. It was not very much fun. And sometimes those waves, they come out of nowhere. You're just jumping around, having fun, playing in waves that are 2 or 3 feet tall. Then out of nowhere, boom, 6-foot wave. That can happen, So a lot of them have a drowning experience or other near-death experience, and these don't seem to have any direct connection with the actual GATE program. It appears to be a really weird coincidence, and I don't know what to make of it other than that. Who knows? Maybe there's something to it. Maybe there isn't. We don't know. All right, now here are a few personal anecdotes. There's actually a lot of them. I don't think I'm going to read all of them because this episode is going really long, longer than I thought it would. But here's a couple. I'll read a few of these though. So here's one that I found online. I relate to so many of these. It's kind of wild. The hypnotist one, I got called up on stage and everything. That's another one I didn't mention, by the way. A lot of people went to one of these stage performances where a hypnotist will have you do stuff and hypnotize the kids or whatever. I went to something like that a couple of times, I think twice when I was a student. I remember going to something like that. They have the whole school gets together and they put on the show. So I didn't think that it was necessarily all of that interesting, since it's an experience probably a lot of people have had. But anyways, let's see what they have to say. The hypnotist one, I got called up on stage and everything, did not feel a thing. Felt stupid trying to pretend, and the guy noticed and told me to go sit down. The big headphones with the tone testing. The pink liquid in the small cups. I was told I was a speed reader and would be given special cards to read and tapes to listen to by myself in a different part of the school. A dark, windowless room. I just looked up SRA cards. Yup. Being made to guess / predicting what patterns, shape, or sound came next. Something different than word association type activities and always done privately. Lots of tangrams and Fibonacci exercises. Mancala, that's the seed, the Mancala seed that they remember dissecting a cow eyeball, but it looked like a Mancala seed, but it was a cow eyeball. It doesn't make any sense. I have sleep paralysis almost nightly. The friend, by the way, the friend that I texted earlier also gets sleep paralysis. My ears ring constantly. I get deja vu a ton. I have insane dreams that follow the same pattern, course, locations almost every night. I had a traumatic birth. That's another thing that a lot of these people have in common, is a traumatic birth of some kind. Diagnosed ADHD. I experience hypnagogia, which is kind of like sleep paralysis. Played Oregon Trail. There was another one involving the super old IBM type computers. I was in kindergarten, and all I can remember is a robotic voice saying, touch the antenna, but said like antennae on a colorful cartoon bug diagram, and a random lady watching me, quote, play this game. This is mid to late 90s. INFJ. Interest, obsession with high strangeness, consciousness. Substance abuse patterns, anxiety, self-harm. Reading these are triggering memories / feelings, kind of spooky. Edit, I'm generally taken aback with how much I keep going over and being like, wait a second, how are you describing some of my memories exactly? The hot air balloon one is tripping me out. I'm shook. I have dreams about this scenario as well, or they felt like dreams anyways. But they always have an element of fear / realness to them, like a recurring nightmare where I'm terrified and getting as low as I can in the basket of the hot air balloon. What does one even do with this info? What does being a gate kid mean? I always thought I got sent to these rooms because I was disruptive to my peers due to being bored / unchallenged by regular class, LOL. And here's another anecdote, and then I think I'll end on this one because this one's kind of long. But I tell you, if you go look online, there are countless examples similar to this. There are tons and tons of fascinating stories people are telling about their gate experience. So I suggest you guys go read up on this more if you're interested. Many of these things are true for me or very similar. You've put together a good list. Now people need to remember what really happened on those field trips. Oh, that was a short one. So I guess they still don't remember the field trips they went on. There's still a memory hole there. Okay, so here's the long one that I wanted to read. The following are my memories of the GATE program I attended in 2003. So this went beyond the 90s, apparently. I was in second grade when the testing started, and these memories occurred around that time. These memories are foggy, like memories that I forgot but had remembered before. I saw a TikTok about the GATE program conspiracy, and a few things started jogging my memories. First with the Zener cards, and then I would slowly start remembering various other memories. Here are some of those fragmented and possibly fabricated memories. It's interesting that they think these memories might be false memories. That is really weird. Okay, Blue Room Blindfold. I was afraid to enter the room and was freaked out by being asked to wear a blindfold. The teachers convinced me it was safe and okay when I raised concerns. I eventually agreed to it after having objections. I entered the room blindfold and was sat down at a desk and told to look forward and do not look behind me. The lady was the one who brought me in and told me the rules. She said, I'm going to leave the room and I'll be back in just a minute. I remember thinking that I was probably being watched by a camera or something. I don't remember if I looked or not, but when she returned, she asked me if I had looked. I don't remember my response. Hearing test with button to press. I remember being told to listen to this audio and asked if I heard anything in between the sounds, and I remember hearing something. A man's voice, maybe? In between frequencies. I remember feeling like I wasn't actually hearing the voice. It didn't sound like I was perceiving it through my ears, and was confused, but the man who was testing me reassured me that this was normal. I remember talking to another student in the program about if they heard something in between the sounds, and they said no. A screen with a line on it and electrodes on my temples, maybe? Being told to try and move the line. I remember asking how I was supposed to move the line, and he told me to concentrate on it, but didn't give me much other guidance. This was the same man that was involved with testing other things. So that's weird. So hypothetically here, if that's like a CRT, you could theoretically bend the electron with your mind, the electron stream with your minds, and perhaps maybe that's what I don't, who knows? That's just what comes to mind. The same man tested me with Zinner cards, and I questioned how the cards were supposed to work, and he told me just try it. I asked if I did well on this test, and he said, "You got some of them, but not enough." I remember asking to try it again, and he entertained it. Classroom object guessing. I was brought to a classroom upstairs and asked to locate 3 objects hidden in other classrooms. I asked how I was supposed to know where they were and was told to just try and guess. Then the woman, not with the school, showed me pictures of the objects and asked me to guess where they were again. I don't remember what the objects were, but I think one was a teddy bear. Interrogation. Brought into a room that had windows but were covered. It was darkish. Gifted program teacher told me that the lady who was not from the school was going to come in and ask me very strange questions and to try not to question her. I feel like she asked me some really creepy questions. I feel like one of the questions had to do with killing someone or violence. And she left in the middle of the testing and said, "I think we're done with the testing here." And then the gate teacher convinced her to come back in and told me when the lady was out of the room to be more careful with how I answered the questions. Pink liquid. I was told to drink a pink liquid from a small paper mouthwash cup. I asked what it was and was told to just drink it. I remember saying, "I won't drink it if you don't tell me what it is." Hey, good for you, kid. And they continued on and didn't make me drink it. I asked something like, "So I didn't have to drink it?" or "So you're not going to make me drink it?" And I was told that it was a test. I was told I was the only student to pass this test. I told my mother about this test when I got home, and she told me they wouldn't make you do that and dismissed it. Yeah, and that's crazy. I think a lot of kids, if they went home and told their parents about this stuff, the parents would think, this is just too bizarre. There's no way you did this at school. You're just making this up, right? That's crazy. Library video. These people in suits were introduced to us in the library, and the lady present during testing was there. They were introduced as leaders in their fields. A different man showed us a video on the TV. I think it had something to do with a plane, like airplane. Then he said, "I'm going to show you the second video and you're going to forget what you saw." I objected to this and misunderstood what he meant, thinking he was going to force us to forget, but really I think he was implying for us to just willfully forget. When I objected, the woman present for the testing told me to sit down. The man said no, if he doesn't want to stay, he doesn't have to, and then said something like, "But if you leave, you can't be part of what we're doing today." I remember saying, "But I can still be in the gifted and talented program," and he said, "Yeah, but you can't participate in what we're doing today." I left the room with 2 teachers who then I asked told me they weren't allowed to stay for that video. And they said something like, "I don't blame you for wanting to leave," inferring maybe they picked up on something being weird. I asked the kids who stayed if they forgot the video, and I remember one of them saying, "I didn't forget what was on the video, but they refused to tell me what was on the video." Weird. So he remembered, but he wouldn't. What in the hell is going on here? I also remember a bubble thing, and it gave me memories of a colorful woman trying to get us to meditate and listen to this music while we laid on the ground. I remember expressing that this was dumb, and I remember feeling guilty for expressing it to the lady because she seemed hurt by it. So, yeah, this is all extremely weird. I have a lot more of things like these. I have stories about the hot air balloon or the red hot air balloon, but the people remember it as being a false memory, like it didn't really happen, but they remember that it happened. So pretty weird. And apparently there's a hypnosis method or script using a red hot air balloon where you will put bad thoughts or memories in the basket of the hot air balloon, and then the hot air balloon will fly away and you'll forget the memories. So this could be used to encourage them to forget things, and that might be why they remember it. I'm paraphrasing here because we're getting a little long on time here, and I have to cut it off at some point. I have other things I need to do, like record a bonus episode. I'm hoping I can rope Agent Redacted in for this one and get him to do the movie reviews, because we watched some pretty fun movies, but who knows? We'll see if I can get him, if he's still sick or if he doesn't want to do it or whatever. I'm not going to make him, but if he wants to do it, then we'll do it. So yes, that's our bonus episode this week is either going to be movie reviews and TV show reviews, or it will be, if that's not the case, then I'll do another Blue Book special report. I'll go over another one of those. So anyways, that's the hot air balloon stuff. I'm just paraphrasing here to get through this. There are people who talked about quotes about the gateway tapes that, this person said, for instance, that they can't listen to the gateway tapes. It triggers some kind of PTSD-like response. So that's just a little excerpt of their quote. And there's more. There's tons and tons of other quotes like this. Shout out to the subreddit, the r/Gate Research sub. I looked at various places for this episode, but that sub is by far the best source of information that I found. Most of the other things I found are just blogs or YouTube videos that refer back to this sub, not actual original information. But here on this sub, you have a lot of original testimony from people who were in the GATE research or the GATE program. So huge shout out to that sub. Was a real help doing this episode. It's always best to get firsthand testimony than it is to get somebody talking about that testimony. So, all right. Well, that's about all I have to say for this episode. I wish I could do more because it's such a fascinating topic. There is a lot more to this topic that I did not cover that I would like to. If you want to know more, would you like to know more? If you want to know more, go check out that subreddit. There are tons and tons and tons of really, really interesting posts on there, just really fascinating experiences that people have had. But all right, that's all I've got for you this week. Thank you guys so much for listening. And until next time, keep it strange.